Hello, Rabi. How are you?
I am fine, darling. How are you?
I'm well. It's a miserable day in London. As you can tell, my screen is gray and yours is bright and white and wonderful. And it's pouring with rain. It's one of those typical days. It's been pouring since nighttime and it hasn't stopped. And it's not going to stop for the whole weekend.
Oh, well, with us, it's first of all, it's California. Then it's morning. It's 9 a.m. in the morning. So I get all the light right now.
Ravi, we spoke, I think, last time. I did an Instagram live with you in June, was it?
Yes, sometimes something like that.
And after that, there was that horrible explosion in Beirut.
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that. I am so
Oh my,
very
oh
sorry.
my.
It was, I couldn't believe that anything like that could happen in a city. The mushroom cloud was just extraordinary,
Yes,
absolutely
yes,
extraordinary.
yes. Again,
Um,
it's criminal negligence.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
it's criminal actually. Your family is okay? Were they
My
fair?
family is okay in terms of yes, no, uh, not much physical damage, and they're fine.
Hmm.
They're still, again, it is unbelievable stress, but they're okay.
And the government resigned, right? What happened after that?
Well, the prime minister resigned, so the ministers were dissolved, but the people who are in power are still in power. And again, it's not one side or the other. It's everybody. It's every single person.
Hmm.
Um, they've been corrupt forever and ever and ever. They've stolen. Again, like we have no funds. Everybody who had money in the bank lost it completely. uh, like savings of people, like kids who are in university outside of Lebanon cannot go to university anymore because there's no funds. The
Oh,
government stole it.
oh.
And then negligent. There's been this sort of 600 or 700,000 tons of this fertilizer in storage, and nobody cared.
Hmm.
So it's criminal negligence, and then yeah, so
Hmm.
it's a horrible situation.
I'm so sorry. I am so sorry.
Me
Uh,
too.
and you were planning to visit, weren't you? Did you go?
No, no. It's still, again, I don't know. I have friends who are going, so people have begun to go visit, but I don't know how. I'm still terrified of COVID. I'm
Hmm.
terrified of going on a plane. And then even if I go on a plane and make it to Beirut, I'm terrified of, uh, getting infected and then infecting my mother. So if I go to Beirut, I would have to quarantine for like
Hmm.
14 days. And then,
Hmm.
when I come back, I have to quarantine for another 14 days.
Hmm.
So it makes it difficult to think. But then again, maybe I'm just a little too cautious. I don't know.
So, on that note, I am going on Tuesday. I'm
To
going back to Pakistan, to Lahore, because I haven't been since March.
Yeah, I
Uh,
haven't been since before that, since the holidays. And this is, I jokingly said, because of the way that I grew up and I was raised, this is the longest I've gone without getting on a plane ever. As in, when I was a baby, I was being taken back and forth between Lebanon and Kuwait and Jordan, and this is the longest I've gone.
hmm, hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have been going about to Pakistan certainly for every 4 months because my
Mhm.
parents are now elderly. But this time it's been a while because of this COVID, and now it made me laugh. I'm going from the UK to Pakistan, and Pakistan demands that people coming from UK have to have a COVID test. So I went
Yeah.
and did a COVID test today, and I have to take the results with me, and it
Mhm.
pleases me no end because all these years they've been saying to us that we are negligent, etc. And look at the UK now. Just look at the UK.
And the UK is doing a lot better than the US. And I love the fact that, like the borders now with so many countries are closed. Like Canada has closed its borders with the US. It's not the other way around. That
Mm,
a lot of countries are not accepting people coming from the US. And that says a lot, about how
Definitely.
negligent we've been.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm constantly reminded of Trump's comment about not allowing so many countries to come, those countries with the asterisk, the four-letter word, whole countries.
Oh, no, let's call it what it is. He said those shithole countries.
Yes.
And then, it's amazing. Like I said, I mean, watching this country deteriorate at such a fast rate, reminds me of that the US in many ways has become a banana republic, it's a third world country without the pleasures that you get from third world countries, like, like in Lebanon is a third world country, and, it might be a shithole, it might not, but you get great food. You get lovely people, you get, over here, it's still the US, but, no,
And you get leisure in
oh
third
God,
world
yes,
countries.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, you
And
get, I mean, more important for me, it's like what makes Lebanon and why when I went to Lahore, I felt at home, is that there's a connection between people that is
yes.
difficult to find in the West. And I prefer to live in the West. There are many advantages to living in the West, but there's the connection, a sort of a, you, I, like whether it was in Lahore or in Jaipur or in Beirut, or there's a feeling that no matter what, you are family, and that is a fascinating thing. So
Hmm.
yes, it might be a shithole country, but we live well. Thank you very much.
So you should go. You should go.
I
Shouldn't hang
know,
around here.
I know.
So I have to also talk about the elephant in the room right now, which is the debate. The elephant being the U.S. president. You have been very clear about your views on him, and on Twitter you call him the imbecile.
Mhm.
And I agree with you hugely. I think that he's a man who has some very important bits of his brain missing.
Mhm.
Certainly, the bit about empathy, and the bit about listening to people, and the bit about even understanding what somebody else is saying is
Mhm.
missing. Um, but Rabi, it looks to me that he may, I mean, if he survives this COVID thing, that he may just come back.
Mhm. Well, let's go back with I call him the imbecile because he's I mean, we've all lived under countries where the leader has been somewhat of a dictator or whatever, but usually they're not that stupid.
Mhm.
So again, like the leaders in Lebanon, all the political leaders, empathy is not their forte by any stretch of the imagination. They don't really care either. They're in it for power. They're in it to enrich themselves, etc. So that is common. What is uncommon for me is the man's intellect. I mean, he is stupid.
Mm.
Which might be good or bad for the country, because you could just imagine what an intelligent person would have done with the powers given to this man. But the other thing, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and so since this is a literary festival, let's talk about it in terms of writing.
Mm.
I find it fascinating that such a character exists. Like if I am to write a character like him, I'm not sure people would believe it.
So Salman Rushdie very interestingly said that his last novel,
Yes, the golden,
House,
yeah, the House of Golden or something like that. Yeah.
and he said that if I had made a plan, drawn it up in my mind, and then I'd gone to see my agent and my publisher, and I said, look, I'm thinking of writing this book. If he'd written this book about 10 years ago, and he
Mhm.
had gone and said, look, I'm thinking of writing this book, and what do you think? And they would have said flat out, no, this is so far fetched. Nobody will buy this. Nobody will believe it. It's not credible. So confine yourself to something which is a little bit more believable. And he said that, it is so interesting how quickly we have come to accept this, and how quickly we have come to normalize it, and to work around it, and that, I suppose, is his greatest achievement.
Yes, yeah. Like, I mean, again, this country has had sort of tendencies for fascism has been clear for a long, long time, except that it's really fascinating how quickly it's been accepted. I mean, there are circumstances and all that, but I find it fascinating. It's whether it's the decline of empire or whatever, that the speed with which what he's doing and how people and even like even what they call the liberal media, which is not liberal, even that, how quickly it is accepted as the norm. I mean, you still have people going like, no, no, this is not okay, but they still talk to the same people, and they perpetuate the same injustices without a problem.
Yeah.
So I find that fascinating. The other thing is for someone like me, like I said, as a writer, it would be difficult to get to write a character like that. Not just because it's unbelievable, because his self-centeredness. I mean, I think every writer in the world should have, and it has a streak of self-centeredness. I mean, just the idea that I think that what I have to write is important enough for other people to read
And
is
pay,
a
and
really,
pay for.
really, really self-centered thing. And every writer has a streak. That
Yes,
there's no two
of
ways
course.
about it. But that kind of self-centeredness, I cannot begin to identify with. It's like I cannot get a grasp of how someone could be that um,
Unaware, unaware.
uncaring, like does not care about, like not just doesn't read, but I don't think he gives a damn about anything,
No,
not
Rabi,
one.
actually, I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I think that politicians in Lebanon, for instance, or in Pakistan, or people in power in Pakistan, or in the institutions in Pakistan, who are just so venal and so grabby and so very oppressive, they don't care, right? They don't care. This is the difference. You see what you were saying earlier between intelligence and the lack thereof. He is not even aware.
Right.
I think he is not even aware of what he is doing. I remember when he went, we should get off this topic soon because I want to ask you some other interesting questions.
I was going to say, I do not really want to be talking about him that much.
No, but the interesting thing is, Rabi, for all of us as writers, we are living in this time, right?
Yeah.
We are living in this time of extreme polarization. We are living in this time of creeping oppression, of creeping authoritarianism, of galloping populism, and the thing is that in Pakistan, with the Pakistan army, certainly we are accustomed to living under sort of authoritarianism, but we had always assumed that there were some societies where the institutions were so strong
Mm-hmm.
that they would resist and they would be able to repel any person trying to undermine those kind of institutions, and that was the strength of these societies. So it's a really interesting, I mean, I don't want to gloat or anything. I'm very worried and I'm very scared, but it is interesting to see how quickly even institutions which have taken 300 years to build and to come into existence have been undermined in the space of 5 years, 10 years max.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, you were saying that you can't think of writing a character like that as a satirist. I mean, I have my pick these days. I don't need to come up with plots. I don't need to make up dialogue. It is all there.
Mm-hmm.
In the bizarre things that Modi, for instance, says that we discovered Hindu society was the first, India was the first country to do organ transplant. And you see that in Ganesh, the head of an elephant on a body of a boy. So India was the first country that those kind of astonishing claims, and people take those seriously, and people understand, and people are nodding as if So I was talking about maybe a couple of days ago to William Dalrymple, and the historian,
Mhm.
and who lives in India, and has given many years of his life writing about history of the British in India. And I was asking him that in this time of great polarization and extreme suspicion from both sides, liberals and uh, the right, towards each other, what is the role of the writer and what is the role of the historian and what can we do? And he said something which made my heart sink, actually. He said that liberals in India have got to make their peace with Modi. He's there. He's going to be there. And in fact, if things go his way, he might even get a stronger majority, whereby after which he can change the constitution. And that made me feel uh, very low, when I thought of that. And I thought that um, we have to just hunker down and keep our heads down. What do you think?
I mean, whether like people keep over here saying about the election that he'll lose or he'll win or he'll lose, but for me that doesn't matter. He's already won long before he won the last election.
What do you mean by
When
that?
hmm?
What do you mean by that?
Well, when 63 million people vote for a racist,
Hmm.
it made racism acceptable. It made looking down at the other and hating the other acceptable. It made so whether he goes to extreme of putting people in cages, you know, but the idea that we've lost in that any acceptance of uh, human contacts outside of your group has become uh, a trouble. And again, that's I think what's really bad for writers, because the whole idea of writing is inhabiting somebody else and somebody who is not like you. But it has become, again, like it doesn't matter. The KKK is back in vogue. It doesn't matter whether Trump wins or loses. I mean, it matters a great deal. But any idea of a liberal democracy has been lost, whether it's here, whether it's in India, or when you realize, and there's so many systems around the world, in Brazil, in Poland, in Hungary, where populism becomes the thing, as in and native populism, as in we have our culture, and everything else is terrible. And the truth of the matter is that any advancement in any age has come through the meeting of cultures,
Yes.
not through separation of cultures.
Absolutely. In the free flow of ideas and exchanges of population also.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so it becomes, we've lost already. So how do we go on is through, constant resistance. My theory, whether it's right or not, is I believe that my work and what I do has been in resistance to the dominant culture for all the time that I've been writing. So it's not Trump to me that is the problem. It's not Modi. It's the nativism. It's the idea that the dominant culture, that we should all adhere to it. So whether it's, again, being an Arab in the United States, or being gay in a straight culture, or being not married, or what, all these things is a resistance to how people and the dominant culture think that the way that it should be. So my personal belief is that writers should always be writing against the beliefs and the norms of the popular culture.
Majority.
Okay. Now, again, some people will tell you, no, that the best way of writing is to reflect the dominant culture and make it see itself. And that is valid. That's not what I like, and that's not what I prefer. I prefer to just rattle cages.
Mm.
Not, I don't know how effective it is. It's like obviously not that effective because we're getting worse and worse and worse. But I don't see a writer. Uh, it's like I may disagree with Dalrymple. That liberals have to make their peace with Modi. I mean, liberals might. I don't know, but as a writer, I can't. I cannot. I cannot make peace with Trump. I might have to. I mean, when I say that he's won already, I have accepted the fact that but that the society has changed and everything. But to make peace, I didn't make peace with Obama. You expect me to make peace with Trump? And I thought, Obama was a great president. I just hated everything he did. His policy,
well, not everything. I have to disagree with you. I thought he was much better on climate, for example.
Absolutely, but not enough for me. Again, everything is an exaggeration. But what I'm suggesting is that for me, government as a rule, as a writer, I sort of resist government. Anything that tries to tell me that this is the way it's supposed to be and this is who we are as a people, I will show them something else. That this too is who we are, and this too is who we are. And that is a conscious choice. Or I mean, even if it's not a conscious choice, since that's who I am, it is reflected in my work. What I'm suggesting is that I believe that for most writers, this is what they do. They will try to show and to resist the constraints of the dominant culture. I've always said that writing about the human condition is a political act. That it's an act of resistance. We're basically saying that I as a person exist within this big infinity that you call your nation or your your religion or your whatever. That for me, the individual person, the characters are much more important than the system they live in. Whereas everybody will tell you that the system is what's important. For me, and I believe for any writer, the person is much more important than the system.
Yes, because whenever we write about people, right? We imagine ourselves. Certainly for fiction writers, you have to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. And you have to put yourself in the shoes of many different people in one book, for example, and see life from many different angles. And as you said, reflect that different truths from many different aspects. But Rabi, we've been doing all of this. Writers understand that and they believe that and they also live that truth, So would you say that we have failed? We writers have failed?
Yes.
Because nothing seems to have made a difference, right?
Well, but I believe that writers have failed because what we choose to take on is much bigger than what we think it is. And it's a glorious failure when we fail. Like I've always said, when I sit down to write a book, I intend to change the world. And I fail miserably every time. but the intention is what makes the book ambitious, even if it fails. But again, it's like we're talking about also two different things coming from different places. Different writers have succeeded in different forms. Like I believe that Pakistani writers have succeeded more than British writers. Yeah, well, in terms of bringing ideas into the discourse, maybe it's because, in a quote unquote third world country, it is much more malleable to change than in a system that's entrenched. But primarily, it is because I think that the writers from Nigeria or writers from Chile or writers from Pakistan they understand the effect of what a dominant culture does.
They
And
know
they,
what it is like to live under the heel of that boot.
yes,
Yes.
and they're not, they don't delude themselves into thinking that, you know, their empire is the best. You know, whereas,
Long time since they had an empire.
well, I'm not saying anything, but no, when I'm saying an empire, it's an empire of thought. You know, in Pakistan, you have an empire, like the dominant culture controls everything. You know,
Yes.
you had the
Yes.
traditions and stuff. So uh, almost all Pakistani writers that I know fight against that.
Yes.
In the US and in Britain, they're still, um, a lot of writers are still part of the system. And again, it's like, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure. Like the the Lebanese government offers me a prize, I will not accept. I do not know many British writers or American writers who would not accept, because they consider their government to be less evil. And I'm suggesting that every government is evil. You know, every
I don't know
system is
if
evil. So what the difference is that in writers from, you know, again, from like Mexico or from Chile, or they've seen it. They see what they're fighting against much clearer than writers in the West.
yeah, I agree with you to an extent. I don't know whether writers in the subcontinent or in, I don't know about Chile, etc. But I do know that writers in the subcontinent would probably not take an award from an army dictator.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from a democratically elected government, they would probably take it,
Mm-hmm.
and be very proud of it as well, because you know what you want more than anything else is to be recognized by your own people, um, and to have the appreciation of the people from among whom you've risen. I think it's important for many people. It's certainly important for me as well that my work is read and appreciated in Pakistan, first of all, because that is what I'm writing about, and those are the people who understand it best of all. And
Mm-hmm.
those are also the people who understand what I'm trying to do best of all. You know, so for me, that's I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself. For
Mm-hmm.
me, that is important. Um, in other ways, I don't. You know, Rabi, I remember a long time ago when you came to Pakistan for the literary festival,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we met, and we had a chat about being a writer and what it meant to be a writer. And you said to me, I remember very distinctly, that a writer must protect his or her outside status
Mm-hmm.
uh, very carefully, outsider status very carefully, because it's only when you're an outsider that you can observe. Um, and now we are more outside than ever before. So we can observe better than ever before. Whether or not anybody's listening to us, whether or not we're just, lone voices shouting in the wilderness is another matter. But I think it's more important than ever. Right now it's more important than ever, and I think it's as you were saying, that in the subcontinent, and in Chile and in Nigeria and in Lebanon and in Egypt and in Iraq, people have, whenever they have written, they have to screw up their courage to write, because you're always going to upset people in power when you write truthfully.
Yep. It was,
um,
sorry.
Carry
It,
on.
it was Philip Roth who once said that he envied, I'm paraphrasing, that he envied writers in Eastern Europe because there was an urgency to their writing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's true.
Mm.
You know, and then, like I said, there's an urgency to most writers coming from, you know, Nigeria or Chile or wherever.
Mm.
Um,
I remember some of the most extraordinary writing that came out in the 80s was from South Africa.
oh God, yes, yes,
Mm.
yes, yes, yes. Again, it's a and what I mean, I agree with Philip Roth completely. What I disagree with him on is that there were similar problems in the US. They just weren't looking hard enough.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know, it's like, uh, you know, the in the 80s, where Eastern Europeans were writing for their life,
Mm.
uh, Americans were killing people
Yeah.
around
No,
the
also,
world.
but Rabi, I will say one thing. Blacks were writing something completely different.
Of
Black Americans
course,
were writing something completely different.
of course.
And, you know, I came across this saying by, I think it's by, God, you know, I'm getting these senior moments more and more.
Tell me.
Who's the
And I'm older than you are.
but you know, the black writers in America were saying that you know, we've been writing about this for so long, from
Thank you.
right from the 60s. You know, the guy who wrote Giovanni's Room,
James Baldwin,
James Baldwin. James Baldwin said this, that
my hero.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And he said that all our heroes, you know, he said that if I had been allowed to write anything else, if I could just have written about anything else, there was so much more to write about in the world. But instead, we have just been concentrating on this, you know, Maya Angelou, him, Morrison, everybody, you know. And it's just been, even today, you
Mhm.
know, it's the same thing. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were discussing the writing of brown people, and how when white people, white publishers publish brown people's writings, they insist that your writing has to be about things which are deep and meaningful and sad and difficult, and because that's what our readers want and engaged with very, very deeply. So this friend of mine was saying it's like our job to educate them,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
And this
And
is what I mean by sorry, it is the minorities writers' job to educate the dominant culture.
yes, but at the same time, while when you do that, I mean, like with James Baldwin, when you do that, you have to forego a lot else that you might have wanted to
And
write.
sorry, I'm saying that it is the writer's job according to the dominant culture.
Yes, according to,
I resist that.
yes.
And in many ways, so does James Baldwin. When you get somebody like Baldwin, who is in my book a genius, he deals with the urgency of the matter of the day.
Hmm.
So he
Yes,
has to deal with that because his life depends on it. The
yes.
life of his family depends on it. So he has to deal with that urgency. And at the same time, like any good writer, it transcends that and
Hmm.
goes beyond to the general public. So
Hmm.
that's why, you know, it's like if a uh, a writer was writing about quote unquote the black experience or what it's like living in a under a dictatorship in Hungary, and wasn't able to transcend and include, uh, it wouldn't work. It has to, any good writing has
Hmm.
to address the urgent situation of life right now,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
as well as what it's like to be alive at any point.
Yes.
So those two have to always go together.
Hmm.
The trouble that I think with a lot of Western writing, and I love a lot of it, is that a lot of it, the really good ones, deal with the, you know, what it's like to be human for a
Hmm.
long time, but not the specific urgency of life right now. So
Hmm.
for me, if if I am seeing refugees, you know, being drowning constantly, it is difficult for me to write about a couple in Minnesota who are contemplating divorce.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with the couple in Minnesota. It might be urgent for somebody. But I find it difficult that in this country where, say, Black people are being shot indiscriminately, most of American writing is about, a couple in Minnesota. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with a couple in Minnesota, because that's part of what literature is the grandness of the quotidian, of the day-to-day. But we're also living in urgent times, and we're always living in urgent times. It's just that for a lot of writers, they're protected, they're privileged. And this is,
I find this very interesting that, when writers, certainly writers from Pakistan, were writing, they're constantly being asked, particularly when the war on terror was a big deal, and ISIS was up and all of that, and the Taliban, etc. We were constantly being asked to engage with that question. And we were also being asked, I remember living here after post 9/11 and constantly being told that moderate Muslims need to speak out and to denounce Islamism, and to denounce jihadism, and to denounce this sort of right-wing Islamic. And if you want to be taken seriously, and if you want us to think of Islam as a peaceful religion, then you have to step up and you have to say. And I was thinking to myself the other day that yes, Islamism is not is morally reprehensible. That whole fundamentalist creed, as espoused by the Taliban, is morally reprehensible. But so is white supremacy. And white supremacy,
the invasion of Iraq. So
but white supremacy has been around for 400 years, and no writers are expected to speak up against it. Nobody says to white writers, it is your job to stand up and denounce it, because otherwise we will say that you're all with them.
Well, in my opinion is, yes, they're all with them. No, I've always joked that, nobody ever asks white people to apologize for, bad Hollywood movies. It's like the damage that dominant cultures do, and Islamism is a dominant culture in parts of the world, so that it doesn't really matter what belief system is. In my opinion, the belief systems are evil. All belief systems. If you think that this belief differentiates you from another human being, that's, in my opinion, wrong. So whether it is I am American, or I am Christian, or I am, whatever, any kind of identity is a fascinating subject. Particularly when you are the dominant identity, then it becomes, it's like if a Black person or a gay person says, I am Black or I am gay, I'm not exactly sure I approve, but it's not that much of a problem, because they are still a minority. They do not have that much power. When a Muslim in a Muslim country says, I am Muslim, that's a problem. Because it basically says that whoever is not part of that group.
It's exclusive.
And that exclusion of the other, when you have a dominant culture that excludes other, it becomes problematic, as you see in India, or even in Pakistan, or in Lebanon, or in the United States. So that is the.
And we see in Pakistan, certainly, the way minorities are treated.
Yeah.
We see that very much. Even women are treated, or anybody who does not have the same kind of power is treated is a problem.
Yeah. So as much as as much as it's like there's a problem of white supremacy here. There's a problem of, every culture, every dominant culture has its problems, which is why I believe that a writer has to be position himself or herself against what is conceived to be the dominant culture, to rattle cages constantly.
I agree. So how are you rattling the cage these days? What are you writing?
I have a book that comes out next year, around this time. I'm not exactly sure, maybe September. And it is about the refugee crisis, Syrian refugees.
Syrian refugees.
Yeah.
And where is it set?
It's set in many places, the backstory, but the actual setting is in Lesbos during the boat crisis when they started arriving. I was there, so it's in January 2016 in Lesbos, and it was a really difficult book to write, and it's a strange book, but it's a fabulous book.
What is it called?
The Wrong End of the Telescope.
The Wrong End of the Telescope. I look forward to reading it.
So do I. I look forward to you reading it. I mean, it's so funny because when you were saying that you would accept an award, that it's important for you that to be accepted by your people, and this is my problem. Not it's like, for me, no. I want to be accepted by you. I want to be accepted by Kamila. I want to be accepted by Salman Rushdie. I want to be accepted by my people, writers. And it's great. I love that, when Lebanese read me, but it's I want, and yeah, I was sorry. I was thinking it's a tangent, and
no, I just sometimes feel that when I say that I want to be accepted by my people, not necessarily accepted so much, but I want them to read my stuff, because I feel that they will understand it better than anybody else.
So this is what I mean by we're all sort of self-involved a little bit, because I want them to read, everybody to read my work, because I think my work is important enough to be read by everybody. I mean, again, I think the arrogance of that statement is so fascinating, but I don't know how anybody would be able to write if they didn't think that.
Yes, you have to start with that premise, that what you have to say is of interest to the world.
The world.
The whole world.
I just think that, like, you go, really? Did I just say that? Yes.
So tell me also, Ravi, how do you keep yourself cheerful through this time?
It's difficult. It's really difficult. I'm a depressive, by nature. But I have been blessed with the ability to make fun of myself and to make fun of the world. I find many things funny. But most of all, I find my concerns funny. And it's like I was talking about Syrian refugees, and what is amazing is, like, if you want to know how to keep yourself up, volunteer for something. Like, I've talked to so many refugees and stuff. As depressing as that is in so many ways, it reminds me how lucky I have it.
My daughter spent August in Calais. With the refugees in Calais, and she was there for a month, and she was working in the kitchens feeding them. And she came back, and it was almost like her skin had been ripped off,
And again, it's terrible, because in my novel I talk about this, because then we're going like, oh my God, you're so self-centered that you're helping people to feel better about yourself. But at the same time, again, it's like when I start thinking that the world sucks and my life sucks, as I sit surrounded by all these books. I mean, what better life could anybody have? And then so it cheers me up. And again, the other thing.
Rabi, sorry to interrupt, but to be able to write is a great privilege.
Thank you.
It's a great, great privilege to. This is hard as it is and lonely as it is, and sometimes it causes enormous self-doubt and great degree of, despite our huge confidence in that we feel that what we have to say is important to the world, it is still sometimes a very difficult difficult life to live. But having said that, it's also a glorious life, and it's a huge privilege.
Well, it is, I mean, I do say it's hard every now and then, but then, like I said, go spend time with different people and you realize writing is not hard. I think, hard for me would be, waiting tables, being on my feet for 12 hours, having to talk to people. Hard is, I remember I went to Machu Picchu last year, a year and a half ago. And as we were climbing, there were workers like working with stone at, like 5,000 meters up. And it's like, I kept thinking, how can they breathe? And stuff. So no, that is hard. Writing, honey, is easy. I mean, it's hard, of course, in its own way. It's just, relatively speaking, when you start looking at the world, it's tough out there.
It is tough out there. That's true. Ravi, I want to talk about one other thing, which is also sort of big these days. And obviously, I just said to you, I'd had a COVID test done. It's the pandemic, but this is not the first pandemic that you have lived through, right? So the AIDS pandemic was the first, certainly in my living memory. And that one was felt, and the effect was borne in great majority by gay communities all around the world. And also, I imagine, of course, in sub-Saharan Africa, it was devastating. But how do you think it's different this time?
There are a lot of similarities, but one of the primary difference is that even though there is a little bit of it with COVID, there was never it's your fault. You have the disease. There's still some of it, it's like we still get you, well, you weren't wearing a mask. But it's not the same. The other big one is,
I'm sorry, but in the United States of America, thanks to your president, the Chinese have been held responsible.
Yes, but it's not the sick person's fault. Okay, and during the AIDS crisis, it was always the gay people's fault. That they're getting it because of such and such. But the other big one is that even though a lot of people were abandoned, the gay community came together and started taking care of its own. There is something that is, to me, horrifying about COVID, which is that most people are dying on their own. And nobody goes near them because they're so terrified, because it's so much more contagious, or that it's airborne contagious. And that is a horrible, horrible thing. I mean, I keep imagining, older people in the hospital room and nobody to hold their hand. Is a horrifying thing. Again, during the AIDS crisis, people would be dying, but I always felt that we had friends to hold hands. We had hospices. So in COVID, this is a horrifying, horrifying disease.
Yeah, and particularly for older people, who are so isolated from their families anyway.
Thank you. But I mean, even if they weren't, they have to be isolated if they're sick. So it's a horrible disease.
Yeah, it is. I want to end on a more cheerful note.
Okay.
When are you coming next to Pakistan?
Well, first of all, you have to invite me, but two, you have to promise me what you're going to feed me, because, my eating in Pakistan is extremely important.
When we chatted last time, when we chatted online about this chat show, you said you wanted to discuss mangoes. If you come in the summer, I'll give you mangoes.
This is the thing that the thing that kills me is I grew up with mangoes and stuff, but for me it was always Alfonso. And then I'm told that no, Pakistani mangoes are the best. And I've never had a Pakistani mango.
Okay, so Rabi, come to London. I'll feed you mangoes here. There's
Okay,
one
good.
called Samar Bahisht, one kind of mango called Samar Bahisht. You know what Samar Bahisht means?
No.
Samar means fruit.
Okay.
Yeah? And Bahisht means heaven. So
Ah,
the fruit of heaven. So you have to come to London and I'll give you that one here.
okay, great.
But you have to come in July.
Yes.
And you have to come once COVID is over so we can go to the bazaar and have
Thank
it.
you. Yes, yes. I would love good mango. I would love a good mango.
Okay, great. It's done. It's done.
Okay.
Thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank
And
you so much for having me.
keep safe, look after yourself, and I look forward to reading From the Wrong End of the Telescope next year, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay, darling.
Take care. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Bye bye.